Rarely do we have a star here for Odyssey House Journals, but we have one today. I'm Randall Carlisle, your host, and our star is Casey Scott.
You are too kind to me, sir, because I have looked up to you my whole life. I was telling my coworkers that I was coming to talk to Randall Carlisle, and it was crazy because everybody was like, Randall Carlisle is the man, the myth, the legend. Really, in our profession, you were the one that most of us aspired to be.
And little did you know that while you were aspiring to be me, I was a functional alcoholic.
And I tell this story because this was the time I'm currently working with KSL TV, and that's who I was working with when I kind of entered my world of recovery. But I remember at the time I was working at Channel 2, and I was the morning funny guy, and I had an afternoon TV show. And I remember one day going to Harmon's in downtown Salt Lake and checking out, and you bagged my groceries. And you stopped me. And you said, hey, I just wanted to tell you, I love what you're doing. I think you're very talented. And I remember going back into my car, sitting there and going, I just received a compliment from Randall Carlisle. And it had nothing to, and not even noticing that you were bagging the groceries or where you had gone, because I didn't really know what happened to Randall Carlisle.
Right.
I just remembered Randall Carlisle likes what I do. And it meant the world to me because I'm not joking when, you guys were the heyday of media here in the state of Utah.
Back in the day, yeah.
You were the gold standard. And I remember thinking getting a compliment from Randall Carlisle means that I'm really doing pretty good at this job, not knowing what happened to you and what your circumstances led to get you working at Harmon's.
Right, right. The reason I the reason I admire you is, and I think it's a great example because this is, obviously, Casey, by the way, if you don't know, because we have people around the country and stuff who tune in, is a star on KSL TV in the mornings, right? And you have your and you have your own podcast dealing with addiction and recovery called Project Recovery,
which I came up with when I was in patient treatment.
Okay, and you and I are both doing sort of the same thing, and you invited me to be a guest on your program once. But what really impresses me, and I think people should take from this, is your resilience, because you were canned several times because of your drinking. Right?
Yep, multiple times.
And you're still. Somebody has given you another chance and another chance and another chance, right?
Well, I often tell people, I go, when you're in the business that we were in, we were reporting the news or working in the news industry. Right. When we make the news, that does not make the news happy.
And
that's what happened to me. I selfishly got behind the wheel of my car and was driving home and wrecked into two different families. And by the graces of God, nobody died. But at that point,
but that's like in generally in our profession, that would have been a death wish for. I mean, like you'd be done.
And to be honest with you, I thought it was. I really thought it was. I remember laying there beneath the car. Smoke was coming off the engine. Sirens started to show up. Blood was trickling down my face. And I knew at that moment my life was forever changed. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I didn't know what was going to happen. But I knew nothing would ever be the same again.
So what was it like? And for people outside of our market, KSL is owned basically by the Mormon Church. Okay, so you were you fired there and then you came back again, or?
This is the remarkable part of the story. So the accident happened. I wake up in the hospital. I look at the metal napkin container on the wall. I don't recognize the person staring back at me. I soon realized it was me because I was the only one handcuffed to the gurney.
Wow.
So I knew it was me.
So you woke up handcuffed, just like we see on TV.
Yeah, to a gurney in a hospital room with two state patrollers at the front door. And it was...
So did you instantly lose your job or not?
I end up going to jail. I bail myself out. I call my ex-wife, who's not a fan of mine, and she takes me home and drops me off. And that night I decide I'm going to go into detox. I call a detox center. They say come here at 7 in the morning, and I schedule that. During that time, I called KSL. I called the assignment desk. I said, this just happened. I want you guys to be aware of it because it's going to be a story everywhere tomorrow. And I need you guys to have heads up. And they said, thank you. And I hung up the phone. And that next morning, I checked myself into detox. And I spent 7 days there. While I was there, I was visited by a couple other treatment centers that said, hey, would you like to come and see if we can help you? And I decided to do so. The cool thing about KSL and Bonneville International is that they kept me on insurance the whole time.
Wow.
So I was able to afford it. You know as well as I know is when we sign these contracts,
there's a morals clause.
and that's what got me.
Yeah.
It was the morals clause. And they could have at any time just thrown up their hands and cut bait and walked away, but they didn't. The whole time I was in rehab, when I had phone privileges, I called the HR department at Bonneville and said, hey, HR, it's Casey. Just calling to see how it was going. And they're like, Casey, we'd prefer you to take this time to work on yourself. When it's all said and done, we'll have a conversation.
So when it was all said and done, what was the conversation like?
2 weeks out of rehab, I get a call from HR saying, why don't you come down here and talk to us? So I go down there and I go up to the second room. And you know as well as I do in this industry, if you go into any room and the president of the company and HR's there, chances are things aren't going your way.
No, you're not getting a raise.
And so I sit down and they asked me how I'm doing. And I told them, I said, I'm doing better and I'm trying to figure things out. And they said, well, that's important to us and we want the best for you. Unfortunately, Mr. Scott, I don't think it's best for us to continue your employment here. And I saw it coming. I had a little glimmer of hope that it might not happen, but I was pretty sure it was going to happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the reason I've always lived downtown while I was working in TV is because I could walk from a bar to my home.
And see, I lived in rural Utah. Well, not rural, but at least 45 minutes. And to be honest with you, that's a lot of the reason why I drank and drove is because I always needed my car in the mornings. Which is it's stupid, and I know how it sounds, but that was the reasoning. Because I woke up at 4 o'clock every morning
to do the morning newscast,
and I wasn't, and so I always needed a car. And so, as dumb as that is, that was the reasoning I used. So Bonneville says, unfortunately, we're going to let you go. And I said, I get that. And I appreciate you guys keeping me on insurance and let me go. I said, but I've got an idea. And the president of the company stops me and goes, Casey, we are firing you. And you're pitching us another idea. And I said, I got this idea. I came up with it in rehab. I want to do a podcast and I want to talk about my road to recovery. I want to let everybody out there come along this journey with me, the ups and downs, the highs and lows. And I want to have people kind of have a better insight of what it goes into this. Because when I was in the 45 days inpatient treatment, one of the things that really resonated with me was the stories of other addicts.
Sure.
Because it made me feel not alone. For the first time when I was in detox, I went to an AA meeting and I stood up and said, hi, my name is Casey Scott. I'm an alcoholic. First time I ever said it out loud. But there was probably 40 people in there. And for the first time in my addiction, I didn't feel alone. For the longest time, I thought I was just broken. I had buddies who could drink and it didn't seem to ruin their lives. I had buddies who could have cocktails at dinner and walk away after 2.
Sure.
I always thought there was something wrong with me. There was,
right.
There was something
You've
broken.
You've got something left in your glass. Why didn't you finish it?
You would be surprised of how many times we'd get to the door and I'd say, oh, I forgot to tip and run back and finish their drink.
Yeah.
Because I thought to me in my mind, how crazy are you to walk away with something in that glass? That just seems so foreign to me. You know what I mean? I always finished it.
Me too.
You know what I mean? I was like, we can't go. We got a half a bottle of wine here.
I remember a bourbon tasting party that I was invited to, and so they poured bourbon into little glasses, and you'd say, "Wow, this tastes like whatever."
Yeah, this has got to. Yeah.
And before I left that, because people would leave the bourbon after like one taste, and leave the bourbon in the glass. And when I walked out of the bourbon tasting party, I emptied everybody's glass. You know, it was like, what a waste.
Yeah, a waste.
Yeah.
And so there I am, and I pitch them this idea, and they go, well, okay, let us think about it. They called me 3 days later and said, we like the idea, but we need you to have somebody else with you. We can't just have you there all by yourself.
We don't trust you.
And rightfully so.
Right.
They go, but if you can get a doctor who will go along with you that can help you, you know, kind of talk about, you know, I can tell you why an addict thinks a certain way, and they'll tell you the mechanics and
Right.
the way it works. And so I had a good friend named Dr. Matt Woolley, and he decided he would do it with me, and we launched it, and that was over 5 years ago, over 2 million downloads.
And so how did you get the job? Okay, I understand that from Bonneville's perspective.
Yeah.
But so how did you get back on the air on Channel 5 then?
So this is the crazy part about the story. For the longest time, that was my number one goal, was to get back on TV. I wanted to be able to leave TV because I wanted to, not because I had to.
Right.
I didn't like the way that I was, you know, discarded. And not discarded, I mean, I did it to myself. So about a year into sobriety, I called KSL. I go, I think I'm ready. And they're like, you're not ready.
Who'd you have to talk to? The news director?
News director, anybody who would pick up their phone.
Okay.
Anybody who was a fan of mine at KSL, who still believed in me and who still talked to me, I would call them and test the water. And there was a couple of times people were like, well, let me see what we can do. And we're running up the flagpole. And it came back and was like, no, you're not ready. And you know what? They were right. I wasn't ready. And so it was 3 years. And by that third year, I figured out how to have a good life without TV. I have a great job for a title company. I'm a marketer, which I still do to today. I go around and I speak to schools and I speak to groups. I do DJing, I do MCing. I'm a gun for hire when it comes to entertainment. And I had a really good life. And I had finally figured out that maybe this TV thing wasn't going to happen. And you know what? That's okay. It's okay. And my life's going to go on, and I'm still going to have a good life. So one day I'm sitting on the couch, and the phone rings, and it's the news director. And I had gotten some calls from the news stations before, but it usually had to pertain to them doing a story on addiction or treatment centers, because I was now their guy when it came to that kind of information. But that wasn't what the call was for. The call was, hey, Casey, there's some shaking up going up on the morning show. And we're thinking it would be fun for you to come up here and give it a try. What are your thoughts? And I said, are you kidding me? And I didn't say yes. I said, this is amazing, but I need to talk to my kids. I need to talk to my girlfriend. I need to sit back and think about it. A year earlier, I would have signed right there without even reading the contract. Let's do it. But my recovery had meant so much to me and my life was so full that I didn't know if this was going to jeopardize my recovery, what kind of stress this was going to put on my family. Because it used to be cool for my kids, and you know this, going around saying my dad was the fun guy on TV.
Sure.
But then there was a year and a half where it wasn't fun to be my kid, because people were sharing my mugshot on Instagram. People were Googling my name, and my mugshot was coming up. And so it wasn't a good time for my kids. And so I had asked my kids and my girlfriend, I go, hey, I've got this opportunity. I want this to be a family decision. Because my alcoholism was, I thought, my own decision, but it was a family disease. And they all had to go along this ride with me, even though they didn't ask to. So I wanted them to be a part of it. And my kids go, yeah, Dad, we think you're happier when you're doing it. Why don't you give it a shot? My girlfriend goes, if you think it'll make you happy, give it a shot. I said, well, it's only a month. They only want me to try it for a month. So let's see how it goes. So I jumped on, and we did 2 weeks. And the news director called and said, hey, let's give this a go again. What do you think?
Cool.
And so now it's been 3 years I've been back on air.
Right.
And no signs of stopping. Well, you know how this industry is.
No, and I think the thing that's important for people listening or watching this podcast is the fact that people in recovery should be given another chance. because
Maybe 3.
well, yeah, and as you well know, people have what's the average, like 7 rehabs before it takes for people, whether it's drugs or alcohol. And so all these people with a past similar to yours. I mean, luckily, I don't have a criminal past. I just have a screwed up personal life past with 4 wives and stuff like that. And that's, again, is all my fault too. But so people, I guess my point is you shouldn't judge somebody because of their past, because this sounds weird, and I'm not defending people like you and me who are in recovery, but I really believe that if you dealt with an addiction, which is rugged to get out of, and it does take a lot of work, that perhaps we come out as much stronger people in recovery because we've gone through that.
I tell people all the time, because people ask about my kids, and I wish for nothing more than having my kids not have gone through what I put them through. Because it was horrible, it was terrible, it's not something that I ever wanted or planned. But because of what my kids went through with me, I can tell you right now, they're more loving, they're more empathetic, they're stronger, and they will be better people because of it. Unfortunately, I hate that my part of the story is what got them there.
Right.
But I can tell you now this, I mean, they have a better understanding, and they are fighters, and they are warriors. And so I think you're right. I think, Dr. Matt, who will tell you that resistance promotes growth, and without it, you won't grow. And so I do think I'm a better person. You've been in the rooms before, and every time, I still don't know if I'm there, Randall, where people will stand up and go, I would not wish this disease on my worst enemy, but I wouldn't change it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm still not there. I'm getting close. You know what I mean? I still would like to have a life where this didn't happen and I didn't have to hurt people because of my ignorance and my selfishness. Yeah. You know what I mean? But because of this disease, I'm living my best life. I really am. I mean, I had no idea. I remember sitting down and people would go like, what do you want your life to look like in 5 years? And Randall, my honest answer was, I just don't want to be in pain. I want to be able to pay my bills. I want to be able to see my kids. And I don't even care if it's fun. You know what, Randall? I will settle for great. I will settle for okay. I don't want to be in pain, and I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
And they would go, now times that by 500. Times that by 1,000. I go, you are up in the night. There is no way my life is going to get better than it was in its heydays. There's no way. But I'm here to tell you, my life is so much fuller, so much more genuine, so much more honest, so much more easy today than it ever was. And I mean, sometimes I feel I can't pinch myself. I can't believe that I get to do this, and I've got another opportunity to do what I love. I'm very blessed, very grateful.
You are.
And fortunate. And it's insane. It's insane. And so when I go talk to people, like I just did the other night at a recovery center, I said, you've got to learn how to flip the switch. There's so many of us who get into an inpatient treatment and they think of it as a punishment. I'm being punished. You know what I mean? And look what I have to do now. I have to go to rehab. It's a gift. Recovery is a gift. And once you sit there and you figure it out, that these guys are going to show you how to get your life back, how to be a contributing member of society, how to get trust. It's a gift. It's not a punishment. But so many of us think of it as a punishment, like we're failures, and now we have to go to rehab.
Right.
When you figure out that you get to go to rehab, that you can change your life and you can live a better life, it's a gift.
Oh, absolutely. And when you finally get that gift, I mean, what a change in your life. I mean, I wish I wouldn't have waited as long to get that gift, but I find myself more peaceful, more empathetic, more caring about other people, and patience. I mean, I tell the story that like I'd buy a table at IKEA, and I'd pour the screws out on the floor, and I'd say, there's one missing, screw it, I'm going to have another beer. And I could never get the table together. I didn't have patience, and now, it's so different. And the thing about you bring up your kids are going to grow up being so much more empathetic for anybody dealing with an addiction because they had to go through it.
I have the most honest, genuine interactions with my kids nowadays. Like my oldest, who's 20, now a sophomore at the University of Utah, we have open conversations about alcohol. We have open conversations about drugs. And she wrote, it was just on Father's Day, she goes, "Thank you for being my father." She goes, because of you and what we've gone through, you are my best friend and I can tell you anything. And it's so great to have somebody that I can be honest with.
Wow.
And she's my world. And I've got 3 beautiful kids. And because of that, recovery, I get to be with them. Did you know Jim Henson has a lazy eye?
No.
I know this because I'm laying in bed with my son and he goes, "Dad, Jim Henson has a lazy eye." And I go, "What?" And he's really into puppets. And so he was reading this book on Jim Henson. 6 years ago, all I would do was try to get them to sleep fast enough so I could pass out.
So you could, yes.
So I could pass out. But now I get to be a part of their lives. And I'm not worried about where to get the next drink. I don't plan on having 3 cases of beer at a kid's birthday party because I remember my ex-wife going, "Who's this party for?" "Your son's 7, but I get to have these wonderful moments now. We're just getting ready to take a family trip to Lake Powell, and I can't wait to be able to sit on the houseboat and talk to my kids.
And a trip that you or I would have taken to Lake Powell, you would have stocked up with so much beer and booze.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it'd be like,
Yeah, that would have been the first stop.
Yeah.
Who's got the beer? They're like, "You forgot your swimsuit." "Yeah, but I got all this beer."
Right, exactly.
And so, I mean, that's what's amazing about the world of recovery. And it really is. You can get it back. And I'm always honest with people. I go, it's not going to be easy.
No.
But let me ask you this. When you were active in your addiction, how easy was that life? You got to choose your heart.
That was terrible because, and I talk to a lot of people who are here in treatment at Odyssey House, and I always ask them, I say, "Were you happy in your active addiction?" And nobody says, "I was happy." Take an opioid addict, it's like the only thing I worried about was getting my next fix so I didn't get dope sick. And that was my whole day. And for me, I remember, because I never wanted to get a DUI because I knew I would lose my job as a TV anchor. So when I was sober early in the morning and getting ready to go to work, I would go to the Maverick or whatever and stock up on beer so that later, when I was drunk, I wouldn't have to drive and find more beer. But that's the way you plan your day. I
remember one time my mom called me. This is when I was in active addiction. She goes, "This is some BS, Casey." And I go, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "You're out there having all this fun and we're all paying the price." And I remember going, "Mom, really? Does it look like I'm having fun?" Because I'm not. I'm just trying to get through the day. And I'm just trying to get to an even kill. Towards the end, I mean, yeah, there was some laughter here and there, but it was forced and it wasn't authentic. But I was just trying to get through the day. And that's how miserable it was.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Speaking of your podcasts and our podcast, there's a lot of interest in them. Mm-hmm. And I just saw a figure today. There's 46 million people in America right now suffering from a substance use disorder. And I think there's an interest in podcasts dealing with addiction and recovery. Not necessarily, I don't think I would have watched one while I was drinking, but I think our loved ones care about people who are in addiction and what can be done and everything. And that's why there is such an interest. I mean, you guys have massive following in your podcast. And why do you think, and it's not somebody who's like, say, "I want to hear how drug addicts live and stuff like that." People have a genuine interest because there must be a connection.
When I was active in addiction, I would watch the TV show Intervention.
What?
And I was really, as stupid as it sounds, trying to learn their playbook. I mean, I was trying to figure it out. I was like, it was insane. I would watch Intervention and be like, and I would learn verbiage and I would figure it out. And so if people attacked me, I could respond. And it was insane. The reason I think our podcasts are so popular to loved ones of addicts is because everybody's trying to figure out what to do. It's your kids. So are you enabling them? Are you putting up boundaries? Right. Are you doing what's right? Because nobody wants to do it. When we first started this 20 years ago, and you a little bit longer, you would do like a breast cancer awareness fundraiser. Right. And you would stand up top and you go, hey, raise your hand, if this. And then by the end of it, everyone would have their hand raised because that's how much breast cancer has affected them.
Sure.
It's the same thing with addiction now. Everybody's got somebody in their family that's battling addiction.
Or a friend, or in the church, or wherever.
Everybody knows somebody, and nobody knows how to deal with it. Like, I get weary of anybody who tells me they've got it figured out. And what's working for me might not work for you. And what you've got to do is figure out what your recovery looks like, what makes sense to you, what you can do day in and day out and maintain it. And evolve. It's got to evolve because you're in a change.
Sure.
Because, the more time you get, then your brain gets complacent. And then how do you keep it engaged? And what do you do? How do you keep it? We say on our podcast, the opposite of addiction is an abstinence. And that's what most people think. The opposite of addiction is connection. And you've got to find that connection. You've got to find your tribe. And Utah is a wonderful place to find that recovery.
We have so many people in the recovery community here. You and I have emceed events together and spoken at events, and the recovery community is huge.
And the most giving and loving people you have ever met, whether it's Fit Recovery, Odyssey House, Wasatch, Pinnacle, Uni.
Sober softball.
I didn't know people played softball sober until I got into recovery.
I never golfed sober. I never.
And I love it. And what's great about it is that it's all walks of life. And that's why I started the podcast, because I think most people, when they think of addiction, they think of, the downtrodden. They think of the people sleeping on the streets, or whatever it may be. But I was in the recovery house, and it was people from the East Bench. It was police officers. It was mothers. It was daughters. It was
lawyers,
doctors.
Yes.
We've had multiple. And I go, that's the real face of addiction, and nobody's talking about it. And so let's open up a communication and let's let everybody know that it doesn't discriminate.
No.
It does, that's what people, and it might have happened to you, people who like, I can't believe you threw it away. Like, it was a choice. You know what I mean?
Well, it was initially.
Yes.
But after that, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. And it was like, addiction doesn't do that. It was like, oh, he seems like he's got his stuff together. Let's not go after him. No, that's not how addiction works. If it gets its claws in you, you're done.
Right.
Yeah. And it'll be a fight of your life, but it'll be a fight you can win, and life does get better.
And by doing podcasts like this and having this growing recovery community, it begins to erase the stigma.
And sharing our wins and our comebacks, and letting people know that because we've done this, so many people on my podcast will say, I was ashamed I did that.
Well, we all were.
Yeah. That's not me. That was me, but that's not me now. That's not who I am. We are not a sum of our total failures.
Our half hour is up, believe it or not.
I love it.
So I understand there's a bunch of people outside the door waiting for your autograph.
He's lying. Yeah. He's lying.
I made that up. Okay. But I do appreciate you stopping by.
Randall, everyone I talk to in this world of recovery says wonderful things about you. And you are really doing for the recovery community what you did for the news community. You're a gold standard, and I appreciate your friendship.
Thank you. I appreciate yours as well. Thank you. Casey Scott, wonderful. He's going to sign autographs as soon as he gets done here. Thank you for watching or listening to another edition of Odyssey House Journals.